Alright guys, welcome to the Razer TSL. We are coming up to this, not the semifinals, but the third place, fourth place match right here. We've got just an incredible match on the docket today. I'm going to be one of the commentators here. My name is Chill, hailing out of Canada. And I'm joined today by my friend Day 9, coming out of south of the border in the US. So why don't you say hi, Day?
Hey everyone, this is Sean Day 9 Plot reporting in here, doing a little commentary, and hopefully my mic volume's a little bit better today. Yeah, I am super excited for the match today because we've seen Brat OK demonstrate some really strong Terran vs Protoss, and NonY is always renowned for his extremely solid play, and he never really goes for too much cheese in the early game, so I'm always excited to see his matches because they tend to go on a little bit longer.
And I guess just before we get in here, for those of you disappointed that Artosis isn't commentating, he is actually playing in the USA WCG right now. So Artosis is a great commentator and a great player, and we really wish him well in the USA WCG, and he will be back to cast the finals for tomorrow. But as we said, we are here. This is the third place match between Brat OK and Excello NonY. We're going to start here just talking about Excello NonY. He's a USA Protoss player, kind of been on the rise for a while, shown a lot of really great results thus far.
Yeah, and if we take a brief look at his stats, we talked about these last week, that he just had this remarkable 90 and 26 record on the ladder, getting the number 11 spot. And he did do a great job just tearing his way up through the finals, or towards the semifinals. He went 2-0 versus Infernal, 1-2 versus Brat, and then 2-0 versus Infernal. So in their previous encounter, NonY did end up losing versus Brat. And up until then, NonY hasn't really encountered very many Terran players along the way. He only had to play Rhett, Gosia, and Draco, whom he lost 0-3 to in the semifinals. So we haven't really got to see a good look at NonY's Protoss vs Terran at this point.
Yeah, and I believe NonY is kind of known as a Protoss vs Zerg specialist, and he also has a strong Protoss vs Protoss. But, I mean, as you say, we haven't heard too much or seen much against for his Protoss against Terran. Of course, he did mention in the pre-game interview that he feels his Protoss vs Terran is strong enough to get it done. But this will be one of the first encounters we see, especially in the TSL of his Protoss vs Terran. And the Terran player that he is going to be coming up against is Brat OK, the Russian Terran. He's really been a fan favorite, just with his interviews and his attitude coming in, and especially his Terran vs Protoss play has just been impeccable in the TSL thus far.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, he doesn't have as stellar a record as NonY. I mean, Brat OK was 109 and 62 in the ladder, which is nothing compared to NonY's 90 and 26. And Brat OK was 62 and 29 versus Protoss. I think it's really important to note, though, that there were so many Protoss players in the TSL in the preliminary stages that, I mean, you get a lot of practice against Protoss. And I mean, we saw Brat OK go 2-0 against Tarson, and then 2-1 against NonY in the round of 32. And then 2-1 against HeyPro, and a surprising 3-0 against Driven in the round of 8. And I think that's what really got a lot of the fans really starting to watch Brat OK a little bit more, because Driven is just notorious for making that #1 spot at WCG Poland. Ever since then has just been like a surprisingly good Protoss, but it's just kind of shocking to see that Brat OK went 3-0 against him, and then lost just barely in a 2-3 match in the semifinals. So I'm really excited to see how well Brat OK's Terran vs Protoss is going to show through today, because clearly he's proven himself, but we haven't really gotten a chance to see NonY's Protoss vs Terran.
Yeah, and something to note about Brat OK is he's just recently got out of the Russian military, so I mean, despite his kind of weak record, he actually is improving as we go through the stage. He says he plays about 30 games a day, just training for the TSL, so he's definitely shown some improvement throughout the TSL, getting into the later stages now, and I think he's going to be at about his peak right now. And just to move on to the map pool today, we're going to be starting out on Zodiac. Zodiac is kind of a polarizing map. Some people think it favors Terran, some people think it favors Protoss. What are your thoughts on this day?
Well, I mean, if you look at the map statistics, it's 7 versus 3 in professional play in favor of Protoss. So, I mean, just statistically, it does end up favoring Protoss a little bit more. However, a lot of players, you'll see, do a really good job with Terran. After they take their natural, they'll push out just a little bit towards the middle, and then take one of those center naturals. And what makes this map so nice is that, assuming you're not in cross positions on Zodiac, if you're horizontal or vertical with your opponent, you get to push in the same direction as the expansion, which is a really nice benefit to a Terran player, because it lets them defend the expansion a lot more easily while putting pressure on the Protoss at the same time. But, I mean, that said, it's still such a big open center region, and counterattacks, I mean, as we saw in, like, Bisu versus Zelos in the MSL Star League semifinals, Bisu was really good about doing a ton of counterattacks around Zelos' push, and really abusing that large open center area. So, I mean, even though it statistically favors Protoss, I think Brad will be in really nice shape if he can not spawn in cross positions.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right about the positions playing a huge role on this map, and it's also important to note that despite being 7 and 3 in favor of Protoss on this map, that Brat actually has 2 of the 3 Terran wins. So he has shown that he does understand the map, and I favors it, but he can win quite a few games on it, having 2/3 of the Terran wins. So I mean, we're just about to start the map day. Let's make some predictions here.
Well, I mean, honestly, we've just seen Brat OK perform so well against Protoss. I'm still blown away at that 3-0 against Dreven, so assuming Brat OK is in that level of shape today, I'm going to have to vote for Brat OK to take our first match.
And you know what? I love Brad. I love his interviews, and I especially love his Terran versus Protoss style. But NonY is a bit of a favorite to me. I really respect him, and he shows he's kind of emotional when he gets losses, and I really like that about him. He seems kind of human to me. So I'm gonna take NonY. So we've got one commentator on each player, and with that being said, let's move right on into the first game of the day. Let's hit it, Hot Pick.
It's showtime.
Alright guys, welcome to the Razer TSL third place, fourth place match. We have Rox Brad OK spawning as Terran in the 12 o'clock position, and we have Excello NonY spawning at the 3 o'clock position. So, as we said, if there's not cross positions, it is going to favor the Terran, and we see that Brat has secured reasonably good positions on this map.
Yeah, we have NonY spawning at the right position. And nothing exceptional going on right now. We haven't seen any sort of probe go out to do any sort of aggressive cheese yet. I don't think either of the players wants to open with some sort of cheese opening. However, a lot of times in a best of 5, it's a pretty good strategy to cheese on whatever map is played in the first and fifth set, because that way, if you cheese in the opening round, you don't have to reveal your strong build order for that map, and it puts a little bit of pressure on your opponent if you are able to win. So we see that first pylon being thrown down for NonY.
We playing a best of 5, there's a lot of mind games that go into it. I mean, you can't open up with the same build every time. You have to keep switching it up to keep your opponent on his toes. I mean, there is enough time in a best of 5 to overlap, or to adapt to the builds of your opponents. And you can see in the if you look at the overlay in the bottom right corner, every once in a while that will switch to green text, and that'll tell you the change in resources in the last minute. So I mean, that'll just help you keep track of who has the most income, who's playing cost effective, and things like that. So just another addition by our TSL programming team.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts about the TSL, is just all the nice features. I mean, you get to know how many resources were mined in the last minute. There's all these great stats. There's all the... You can even get to view it almost as though you're in a replay. You get to see the resources and food of all the opponents in the bottom right. Again, great job by TSL, and thanks again to Razer for sponsoring this event. So we see NonY, unfortunately, scouts in the wrong direction. And same for... It looks like Brad OK is also scouting in the wrong direction. And nothing too exceptional going on, just the standard builds by both players.
No Zealot coming out of the gateway for NonY. He's decided to put out the Cybernetics core. I mean, Zealot rushing isn't too common on Zodiac anyway, given the long rush distance. Brad OK still having 3 SCVs on the refinery. He's now, I believe, he's taken an SCV off, so that does typically mean some sort of faster expansion, either an FD or some sort of siege expand. We're gonna have to see what it decides, but at this point we're gonna lean towards a fast expansion build by Brat.
Yeah, that's another key subtlety that a lot of players seem to miss out on when they're first improving, is that it really is that important to just take those extra SCVs off and throw them back on the minerals. Every little edge you can get counts huge. So we see that first Dragoon coming out for NonY right now, and the range upgrade also popping out as well. So hopefully we'll get to see some nice aggressive play right at the outset of the match.
Yeah, and this is a really standard kind of solid opening, not overly safe, but he can transition into a lot of play. What we're going to have to see from NonY is if he decides to get a second gateway, or if he's going to scout and then expand. We see his probe coming down to only 3 HP, driven back by that Marine. So Brat doing a good job there. He's made 3 Marines and no more Marine production, so it looks like it's going to be a fairly fast expansion with only 3 Marines at this point. SCV going, looks like the command center is going to go down right now at 23 supply, so a very quick expansion by Brat OK.
Yeah, I mean, it's always... it's a little dangerous to build that command center that early. If you do float it when you lift, it's a key mistake that you can't make, is even though you are making the command center that quickly, if it's not a good time to expand, you definitely should not. And it's really important to see whether or not NonY's going to do some sort of aggressive opening. We still haven't seen a Robo Bay, a second gate, or an expansion be thrown down for NonY, as tech path is a little ambiguous at this point. So that'll be interesting to see in the next few minutes how NonY will transition into the mid game, and then see how Brad OK's early expansion is going to go.
Looks like NonY has decided he's confident enough that no cheese is coming, no sort of early aggression. Puts down that Nexus at his expansion, but key to note that his Nexus did come a little later than Brad OK's command center. But I'm sure once he's confident that Brad is expanding, he'll move towards something, either a Bulldog kind of break to the expansion or a second expansion. It's really in the Protost's hands at this point. He's moving out with 3 Dragoons. We see Brat has Siege researching, a tank out, and a second tank coming, and a bunch of Marines on the ramp, so he should be pretty safe at this point.
You always see those Dragoons moving across. They see the floating barracks. Maybe they'll take a few shots, but definitely good for NonY to go up towards the expansion. NonY going to put on a little bit of pressure here, taking a few shots at that SCV, and oh, it barely makes it alive. Oh, I take it back. Here comes the SCV getting ready to die, and Brad OK moving out with his first troop just to secure that expansion.
Looks like a bit of missteps by NonY. You could see him stopping and the Dragoon firing animation start and then stop. So he pulled his Dragoons back a little too early, didn't let the firing animation complete, and the Dragoons didn't fire. And you can see one of the Dragoons already damaged all the way down to 64 HP. Another one lost its shields. But no big deal, really. Brad OK sieging up, taking his expansion. We're going to see him adding factories and transition into the mid-game. Still, NonY hasn't put down a robotics bay. He's put down a 3rd gateway, and he hasn't shown a sign that he wants to take a 3rd Nexus. So really kind of strange play by NonY. I'm going to expect him to do something. And there, oh, Stargate, what?
Oh my god, this is such a cute play that a lot of Protoss players are liking nowadays. I can't tell if he's going for Fast Carrier yet or Arbiter. In either case, a lot of times you can get an Arbiter, completely avoid getting the robotics facility, and then just rely on recalls and suiciding in Speed Zealots to get rid of those mines, or to avoid the mines entirely. But we could see a Fast Carrier opening pop out. And I'm a little, about those 3 gateways, I'm not sure if NonY actually saw that command center floating down. He may have just assumed that Brad OK was doing a fast push.
Yeah, I think it is going to be carriers. I don't really know if I like this opening against Brad OK. Brad has shown he has excellent timing against Protoss players, and he's not really passive in the mid game. He's not one of those Terrans who will just sit back, wait on 3 bases to 200 and then move in. He does a lot of aggressive mid game pushes, and if NonY's not careful, he's gonna be in a lot of trouble. We see the fleet beacon coming now, and second Stargate. Unfortunately, no, this is not a stove build, but I know how much people would love to see that, but it's not going to be the stove, I'm sorry.
Indeed, the fan favorite will not be shown today. We're much more likely to see a little bit of carrier action going down, as we do see that fleet beacon almost done to completion. We do see this armory coming out for Brad OK, so it looks like he might be going for some flash-style build to try to get that 2-1 upgrade really fast for a really strong push. However, we are seeing the speed upgrade being researched for those vultures. They don't have mines yet, so perhaps we'll see a little bit of aggression in addition to this nice solid late game play by getting this fast upgrade.
And for those curious, the stove is opening with a scout, using the scout to put pressure on, and then moving into Dark Templar, and then moving into Arbiters. It was pretty much a joke, ridiculous build, so we're not going to see that in an event like the TSL, especially when there's $500 on the line. 2 carriers making now, and the Interceptor +4 upgrade is started in the Fleet Beacon. And really, Brad OK is just getting everything set up, getting his third and fourth factories ready, waiting for that +1 to finish, and I bet he's going to time his attack to roll out right when that +1 finishes.
Yeah, and there's a lot of subtle things to note about Brad's play that's really strong. We see the engineering bay floating off to the right, and we see the barracks floating off to the left, so he's really focused on not, losing to some sort of Reaver harass. And also, you just saw a few scans go off around the map, and at this point, Brad OK is almost certainly going to be getting a little bit suspicious because he doesn't see any expansions. Protoss would almost certainly have that 3rd expansion by now, so I'm positive that Brad OK is smelling something funny going on.
Yeah, and with that early armory, he will have the option to make Goliaths really quickly. Normally this kind of carrier build works better against a Terran who's sitting back with his tank siege, has no armory, maybe not even an engineering bay, just scans to work for detection. But really with 4 factories and now a 5th coming, NonY's only going to be rolling in with these 2 carriers, and Brad's going to be able to make a lot of +1 Goliaths very quickly. So NonY's going to have to be careful, despite having carriers. I mean, we all know how much damage carriers can do, but NonY really does have to be careful with them in this situation.
Oh, a little Vulture Harass trying to do a little bit of magic, but doesn't manage to get through. So Brad OK looks like he's just going to continue to mass up a little bit more and begin his push, and we do see those Goliaths being made.
Yeah, the Vulture was very lucky, moved in, saw the carriers. Carriers only have about, I believe, 2 interceptors each. Moving in, that's really weak. And it looks like Brad's actually deciding to push here despite seeing carriers. He's moving in with a bunch of Goliaths and tanks. NonY's using the carriers to work on Brad OK's main. Brad OK doesn't even care. He's moving in. He's got about 5 vultures kind of out of position. Tanks sieging in now. NonY looks like he's ready to push back. He's moving in. He doesn't have speed research yet for that Zealot, so he's going to be driven back all the way. But there's no anti-air with this army despite 3 Marines. That's it. And NonY's really just going to clean up with these carriers if Brad's not careful.
Yeah, I mean, there is no anti-air right now for Brad OK, but this is a really tense moment for NonY because NonY's ground army clearly could not compete with Brad's. And by being, by having these carriers, that's really his only solution to these tanks, and he's pushing them back slowly, but as those carriers start to be more threatened by those Goliaths, it's going to be really tough for NonY to continue to push.
That first carrier, the shields are gone. It's half dead already. It's just only a few Goliaths working on it. The Goliaths are +1 already. But the Dragoons are still moving in. Looks like NonY decides he's just going to try to move in at this point. He's working on those tanks, using the carriers to target the tanks. Brad using the Goliaths to target the carriers. The Dragoons are just melting. We can see blue soup everywhere. Only 2 carriers remain. The Marine trying to work on it. That's not going to work. You're just throwing rocks at the carriers, basically. These 2 tanks are going to get finished, and now Zeld's joining the army. NonY could have a chance here if he unites his army. He's got speed on Zeld's. First carrier goes down.
Carrier falls.
Wow. And the second one's getting worked, and it's going to go down too. It's getting targeted right now. Second carrier goes down. NonY is in a terrible position at this point, despite having the carriers out.
Oh yeah, that's one thing that's so dangerous, is that because you're so low on units in the mid-game with these carrier things, you have to play a little bit more cautiously. You have to build up your army a little bit, and then do a strong one-punch style win. You can't move in and be that aggressive, because if you lose too many units, it's too hard to replenish them. I mean, if you look at NonY's army, there's no Dragoons, no Zealots. I mean, Brad OK has even gotten the time to take that 9 o'clock expansion. And right now, all NonY really has are 2 carriers that look like they only have 3 interceptors each. So great position for Brad OK.
And NonY is working on the interceptor attack, the air attack upgrade, just to give his interceptors some bonus damage. Brad already finished +1 on his Goliaths and tanks, mechanical units, and working on the plating. 2 carriers looking to just buy time. We've got some vultures moving into the natural. NonY actually only has zealots at this point. They're going to get drawn right back into the mines. Oh, but he pulls them back. Very nice control by NonY. And just these carriers are being really annoying in the main. It looks like Brad OK is going around trying to get some probes. There's Dragoons now, so that's going to get shut down pretty quickly. So some solid defense by NonY, but he's down a base against the Terran. He's going to have to do something at this point, bringing the carriers back, looking a little defensive. Really, he sacrificed his economy, so he's going to have to put something together really quickly, or he's going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, by skipping that robotics bay early, I mean, he does have the opportunity to get those carriers a little bit more quickly, but I mean, it was so difficult for NonY to deal with those mines when they first popped out that really denied that first push. So NonY currently has no expansion. His Terran opponent actually has more expansions than he does. And we see Brad OK's Army of Death begin moving towards NonY's main.
Yeah, NonY only has, he's got 4 carries actually and a lot of zealots. Zealot heavy army can flank around with the Goliaths, and NonY's still being annoying, just working on Brat's main and then coming back. Of course, in these positions with the close air travel distance, you can move the carriers in, harass the main, and then bring them back to support the main army. NonY's sending in some Dragoons here, just clearing the mines so that his Zealots will be able to run in and surround the Goliaths. Oh, carelessly running into the Goliaths. Goliaths getting a ton of shots on the carriers, but only the shields are gone on that first one. Looks like he's just posturing up, getting ready to try to break this middle attack by Brad OK.
Yeah, this is just perfect positioning by Brad. I mean, he's just planting himself right outside NonY's front. And yeah, NonY does have all these carriers, but he just can't put too much pressure on NonY's main because he just won't be able to hold off this push. Oh my god, the carrier's taking a few hits, the scan goes down, the observer will go down as well, and that really sucks that the eyes in the sky for NonY are down. Those mines are going to be a lot more difficult to deal with. So this is a really tough spot for NonY. He's up against the wall, no expansions, really needs to make these carriers do a little magic. And he's losing interceptors left and right, thanks to Brad OK's fast +1 upgrade.
Yeah, we haven't seen the carriers really target too many lone Goliaths. Normally, carriers, when they get a mask, can target them, but here we go! Running into the minefield without an observer. Dear God, the mine's just cutting everything up! That's just ridiculous! The ground army is basically dead by the time it gets there. Now these carriers are going to get cut down, and that's going to be all she wrote for NonY, unless he can pull off some magic with these carriers. But I mean, even if he breaks this middle, he'll still be behind. Brad OK, what an incredible defense in this first game thus far.
But NonY continuing to throw out some units, showing maybe a little bit of flair right at the end, but no, too many tanks and Goliath reinforcements coming for Brad. 8 factories of tank Goliath. Too much for NonY at this point in the game. Really well played.
GG's. Wow, kind of a strange game, kind of an uncharacteristic gambit by NonY in Game 1.
Yeah, I'm a little curious I'm kind of wondering why NonY went for that sort of fast carrier thing, because I mean, we do see NonY tend to play a lot more solid, just straight out throughout the game. But I mean, after that first push, it didn't really seem like there was a strong follow-up by NonY. So I'm a little curious to see, like, maybe how some of NonY's practice matches went, like, with that carrier strategy. But I mean, Brad OK's build was just beautifully timed throughout.
Yeah, I think NonY is known more of a player who he practices these solid builds that are kind of counters to everything, and this is basically a step in the complete opposite direction. He sacrificed quite a bit of tech and economy just to get those carriers out so early, and they really didn't pay off. So maybe he was trying to throw Brad OK off, knowing he has a bit of a reputation as a safe player, but it really did not pay off in that game. And Brad, I mean, wow, what a beautiful follow-up, what a beautiful counter he had to NonY's build.
Yeah, I mean, that said, maybe that has to do with a little bit about what we were talking about beforehand, where in the first and fifth map, because they're the same, a lot of times they'll go for some sort of uncharacteristic play or some type of cheese, and perhaps that was NonY's play with that fast carrier build, was just to perhaps get an easy win with the carriers, do something a little bit straightforward, and to secure an easy victory so he doesn't have to reveal any sort of final strategy in the fifth set, and he can play more of his regular game.
Very true, and also we don't know how much the map came into play. A lot of Protoss players, despite in the TSL, the Zodiac being Protoss favored, a lot of Protoss players have said they really don't like playing Terran on Zodiac. So maybe he just felt uncomfortable with it. Maybe he prepared it because he didn't want to have to play straight up on Zodiac. So we're going to have to wonder how much the map came into play. So with that being said, we're going to move on to the Game 2 map. This is going to be played on Blue Storm, which has a really specific way that it's generally played in Protoss vs Terran. And that specific way is Protoss typically opens up with a really quick expansion just because the rush distance is so small. Terran really is going to wall in and go for a quick expansion as well. The center passage only grants access to small units, so I mean Terran's walling in, Protoss is not going to Zealot rush, so you can pretty much assume that Terran is going to fast expand very quickly, and Protoss is not going to Dragoon rush. After that, Terran is trying to get into that sweet spot. They can hit the natural nexus from the gully inside, and to deny that, Protoss is going to set up some Reavers, typically just using Reavers to break that metal push, and then it's straight into Carriers, baby. Carriers are great on this map, and if it gets to the late game, we're going to expect to see them.
Yeah, sorry about that brief pause. My mic had a little bit of technical difficulties there. Yeah, I'm also quite surprised at how balanced Blue Storm is. I mean, despite the fact that it's such an unorthodox, weirdly shaped map, it's very balanced in all the matchups, as a matter of fact. It's currently 7-8 in Protoss vs Terran, in favor of the Terran, but I mean, even then, that's just so close, you can't really say anything too decisive about it. And so, yeah, I think this map is going to be really nice, because it is going to favor both of the players' styles. Because, I mean, NonY does have a tendency to play so straight up, as does Brat. So I'm really excited to see the way a lot of the late game goes.
Yeah, and I'm not sure about Brad OK, but I know NonY does like this map quite a bit personally. He practices quite a bit on it, mostly against Zerg, but I mean, he must have a ton of practice against Terran on that, so he does have a little more, he's probably a little more comfortable on it, and he's got a lot more experience in this map as a Protoss player. So with that being said, we're probably going to move right on to Game 2 on Blue Storm. Let's hit it.